Good. Well, thank you very much, Rob, and welcome everyone to this, the final in the series of walks around the Churn Valley. It's been great fun over the past year or so to explore the area and share some of the insights which we've picked up along the way, although many of you on the call this morning will know more about the area than I do, only having been here for about 6 years. So this last walk in the series is around the parish of Cowley, where Margaret and I live. It's one of the smaller of the parishes in the Churn Valley benefice. And as I often say, it's a good idea, even in a small parish, to take an ordnance survey map along with you rather than relying on the little booklet which I've written. This is the shortest of all the walks in the Churn Valley. Just a triangular shape, really goes out from the centre of the village, across the fields into Cowley Woods, and then goes as fast as possible to the Green Dragon Inn for a pint, and back along the road there past the guide centre. But I am going to add a bit more onto this walk today, if you'd like to stay with us. So this is the basic walk, 1.5 miles, vertical range of only about 75 feet, and very pleasant sort of thing you can do in just about any weather conditions. But as you can see there, I've mentioned that with the recent merger of Cobbley and Cowley into a single ecclesiastical parish, a loop has been added onto the north side of the village, which extends the route by another 2.5 miles, making 4 miles in total, and we'll come to that a bit later on. So there aren't that many public facilities in Cowley village, but there is a post box, and it seems to me that's a good place to park the car, somewhere around there. The route then heads off towards the guide centre and the Green Dragon pub, which are signed. Just recently in the winter months, this next 50 or 100 yards of the lane has been filling up with water, rainwater, so hopefully the council will come and clear that before much longer. Several of us have been writing in about it. The lane continues, and there are views across the Cowley Manor on the left, but there's a little stile just coming into view now on the right side there. I've circled it. Although in real life, of course, there isn't a big red circle around it. That's just for the sake of this slideshow. Over the stile, and I think this is one of the stiles where there's a geocache, or maybe there's another stile nearby. Anyway, it's one of these. And then across a meadow, looking back towards the Hollingworths, and a wonderful meadow in the springtime with lots of wildflowers. At the other end, there's a glimpse there of Cowley Manor in the distance. We obviously picked a good day to take this picture. And then a lane continues, somewhat overgrown. This isn't the sort of place to be driving and meet a car coming the opposite way. You might actually have to reverse for something like 1/4 mile. But it is a beautiful lane, and I particularly enjoy the view when you break out of the woodland and look across the valley there to Cowley Woods. And in my previous walk, I described going through a fire break in the trees there, which takes you up to Elkstone. Anyway, nip across the stile and into the woods. Well, just a few weeks ago, the foresters had been having a wonderful time, and the route was somewhat obstructed. But one or two neighbours wrote in about this, and the foresters fairly quickly dealt with that debris and made a way down through the woods, past the pond, to the Green Dragon. And in the springtime, as I say, the bluebells are out, and it's a rather blissful place to be. Very nice to get to the Green Dragon, which has been opened in between the lockdown periods, and they've diversified a little bit, and now what used to be the function room has been turned into rather nice country store. And Margaret and I sometimes go down there and sit at the back and enjoy a coffee. From the Green Dragon, the lane turns back towards Cowley, and there's a dip in the road. Once or twice I've got caught out here driving along and suddenly finding cyclists or horse riders in the bottom, the dip there. And it's quite difficult in the shade. You sometimes come upon them and have to just have that in mind. Slightly uphill, and then arriving at the Deer Park guiding headquarters for the whole of Gloucestershire. Fantastic resource for them, and very kindly we rent out the central hall which they have there for our PCC meetings and other events associated with the church. I think it was last year they celebrated 50 years of girl guiding in Cowley, and there was a big celebration. Just a little bit further along the lane, there's a view across the grounds of Cowley Manor to a lake, which doesn't look like a lake because it's got green algae on top of it. And every so often, the owner of Cowley Manor arrives by helicopter. I think we heard one just the other day. Maybe that's the sort of view he sees just before landing. And there, as you can see on the right, is the parish church, St Mary the Virgin, which we're going to have a look into in a moment. Here we are, arriving back at the post box, which was the start of our triangular shaped route. Just around the corner to the right there, tucked away under the vegetation, there's this sign posting towards the church. Through the gates, there is a one-way system for cars, but pedestrians can walk through there without any problem usually. Church tucked away there. And then through a hole in the hedge, the yew hedge, which looks as though it's been there a long time, that's the access route into this church. Again, we caught the church on a good day here for this picture. It's been here for a long time. In fact, there's evidence from a time team excavation about 8 years ago that there's been, well, obviously a Roman villa, and there's some Christian symbols associated with the villa. So the Christian faith may well have been in Cowley for nearly 2,000 years. A friend of mine who's a medieval archaeologist visited a few years ago, and he noticed these two very large rocks on the way into the church, and there's two identical rocks jutting out on the other side of the building, and he has a theory that the church has a Saxon foundation. Here's the porch, which we decorated for VE Day earlier in the year. And just at the side of the porch, there's a very interesting inscription. I don't know if you can make it out, but it's the shape of a duck. And from a little bit of reading I've done, this is a mason's mark from a Mr. Ducklington of Chedworth. The interior of St Mary's is quite small and intimate, and quite attractive for wedding couples who like to have that sort of close atmosphere. Right at the east end, there's a depiction of the crucifixion, which is easily overlooked, but well worth gazing at for a while. The church, as I said earlier, is dedicated to Jesus' mother, the Blessed Virgin Mary. church has had quite a lot of work done on it over the years, and two of the key players in this are Edward Hollingworth and Adrian Montague Smith, who did a lot of work, probably about 10 years ago now, I guess, on the church roof, applying for grants and managing the contractors. It was a £200,000 project, and we're going to be reaping the benefits of their efforts for many years to come. Another big figure in the life of Cowley Village is Nora Sly, who was with us until only earlier this year when she passed away. But the masons who were doing the repair work on the roof and around the tower decided that they would like to depict her in the pinnacles, which you can see there right at the top of the tower. You do need binoculars to see it from ground level. There we are. I've highlighted the relevant pinnacle. Whoops. Don't know if any of you have ever been up the tower at Cowley, but these are some of the views. That's looking back over the pond towards the lane which we walked up from the Green Dragon pub, and then looking to the east across the churchyard. Some of these trees have needed a bit of attention recently, and Michael Dykes, our very able church warden, is shown there with his orange jacket on, helping his brother-in-law with the bit of forestry work on the trees, a bit of tree surgery. Very grateful to Michael. He's also taken on the responsibility for Cowley Parish Church in the last couple of years. Jill Clark's our PCC secretary, and she's very able in other ways. She's had at least 2 books published, and this one called Fallout is very interesting because it starts off on the south coast of England, and the main character makes his way back to Cowley and eventually to Minchinhampton. So if you've ever wondered what it would be like to live in a post-apocalyptic world, then Jill has some insights there. We also decorate the church for Christmas, as you might expect, and I think this one coincided with a wedding, so they'd brought in some extra decoration. My daughter and grandson, he woke up that morning and asked his mum, "When am I going to be king?" And he found out a few hours later. Of course, the church being situated next to Cowley Manor makes this a very attractive venue for wedding couples. And I'm just going to play you a little bit of music from the bells, which are quite famous, not because they're particularly good, but they're quite difficult to play. So always a joy to be helping couples at this important time in their lives, and obviously the income we receive from weddings helps to keep the church going. Jill and colleagues have been organising the village fete on an annual basis, except this year with the COVID-19 pandemic, we've not been able to do that, and our finances have taken a bit of a hit. Nevertheless, there were sufficient funds for the lighting project to go ahead. Again, grateful to Edward Hollingworth for supervising that. It was a very long time coming because of difficulties in discussion with the Diocesan Advisory Committee. And more recently, because of the pandemic, we celebrated our Harvest Festival outdoors for the first time. At least we could sing without having to wear masks. And another feature of the pandemic has been the provision of a drop-off point for Cirencester Food Bank. We were in there just the other day and someone had very generously given this whole big blue bag of tinned food, which I'm sure will be greatly appreciated. The economic fallout of the pandemic could even be worse than the pandemic. It's the health effects of the pandemic itself. Another interesting feature of the church, I hope I'm not going on about this too long, is the little stairway that used to go up halfway down the nave to what would have been known as a rood screen with a cross on top of it. That's all been blocked off now. And Edward was particularly interested in the old paintwork, but having had a conservator to check it out, we decided, with permission of the Diocesan Advisory Committee, that we could safely paint over all that. It was more of a Victorian origin rather than something in medieval time. So we're very pleased that the decorators were able to come in. We weren't able to use the church anyway at that time because of the pandemic, and they got on with freshening everything up. So it's going to look really good for wedding couples, hopefully when we can get back to normal again in a few months' time. Edward also carried out a wiring of the external floodlighting system. And that's how it looks now, at, just for an hour or so in the winter evenings. Looks quite special and you feel completely safe walking around the building in the dead of night. Margaret and I had some time on our hands during the pandemic, so we did a survey of the headstones and slabs in the churchyard, produced a survey, which you can see here. And there's probably 150, or maybe more than that, maybe I think I can see 167 graves locations, and then there's another 30 or so reserve plots which are available for someone to reserve if they want to think ahead and have their own specific place to be laid to rest. Well, as I said earlier, the parishes of Cowley and Cowley were merged together a couple of years ago to form a single entity with a PCC covering this whole new area. Just a short distance away, there's a big project going on, construction project, the A417 missing link, which will be, I think it will be involving the demolition of the air balloon pub in due course. There's been quite a lot published about this on various websites, but there's a slight concern that there could be some implications for Cowley village, although I think the landscaping and the noise reduction measures will be quite effective. And here's an artist's impression of a green bridge, so-called. I think the Cotswold Way may be diverted away from the air balloon and across this green bridge in due course. So the original walk around Cowley, which we described a few minutes ago, was only 1.5 miles. And now if you were to continue along the route that I'm going to describe, it's another couple of miles, 2.5 miles, and involves a vertical range of 270 feet. So most people can manage it. And there it's shown with the red dotted line. It goes off in the general direction of Cowley and then loops around past Cowley Mill. So back to the familiar post box in Cowley, and setting off up through the village, the route swings round to the left, up past the old cross on the left, you can see there, and there's the old village school with the bell still in place. Further up the field, there's further up the lane, should I say, there's a view across the fields. And on the left, the entrance to the original rectory a large mansion with quite a bit of history around it. It's been suggested that Alice in Wonderland was partially written there. A couple of years ago, one of the landowners thought he could have an agricultural building at the top of the hill there and made himself a zigzag path. But I think something went wrong with planning permission and it all had to be filled in again. It's healing over quite nicely now. Further up the village, there are some stables. And here's a picture that Jill's husband, Phil Clark, took some time ago. Very fortunate to be there just when a hot air balloon was passing over Cowley. The road then swings round to the right, and there's a little trough there for the horses, going back many years. A rather nice house on the left there, modern architecture. And then you come back to the lane, and straight across, there's a footpath that goes up that shallow depression following the route where the horses are. The horses aren't always there, of course, but I realised after making this offering that there was a sign saying "Don't feed the horses," so take note of that. And then through a metal gate along the public footpath, there's nearly always sheep grazing in the fields there. Very pastoral scene. Here we are looking back towards Seven Springs, and Cheltenham would be just beyond the skyline. And then head towards the masts at Shab Hill, just across an open field, just to keep you orientated. That's where the masts are in relation to the rest of the landscape. And there's a gate. The path then becomes more distinct again, easier to follow. There's a few of our friends, Margaret, Nigel and Anne Scotland. The path goes gently down into the valley, the shallow valley. The odd sign pole there, and Scots thistles. Very pleasant and secluded valley this. I'm sure some of you will have walked here before. And then towards the bottom, instead of continuing up the valley, one swings round to the right to another metal gate, through the gate, and then immediately to the right, there's a track which goes along through the edge of the woodland to a gate. And then the dog walkers tend to go off to up the hill there. Just managed to take a few pictures of these butterflies. I think the pictures here were taken in June or July this year. I'm not very knowledgeable on butterflies or flowers or anything really to do with the countryside. I'm more interested in the landscape and the geology, but I've got a gadget on my, an app on my phone called Seek, S-E-E-K, and you can download it for free, and you point it at the thing that interests you, and it'll usually come up with the name and a little bit about the characteristics. And this was just taken with an iPhone, so quite good quality really to get that level of detail. The Woodland Trust own quite a bit of the land around here. You can see a bench there for if you want to sit down. Then continuing along the track in the general direction of Cowley. I think this is an anthill. Very nice views out across the valley. I think these will be orchids. Not sure about that. And then you come to a junction with a restricted byway coming up from Cowley area. At that point, there are two mounds which are considered to be old burial chambers, a bit like Bellas Knapp if you've been up there, although I don't know whether these have been properly excavated. They were on the Gloucestershire Way at this point. The track would continue uphill towards Shab Hill, but if you turn right instead, you go gently down past some sheep pens and onto what we call the back lane between Cowley and Ullenwood. Again, this is a popular area for dog walkers. That's why the cars are parked up. The route to the left there, where Nigel's standing, goes back to Cowley, but straight ahead, where Margaret and Anna are walking, goes towards Cowley. View across the fields there again in the direction of Seven Springs. And then instead of continuing on the tarmac road to Cowley, there's a footpath goes off, as you can see, the Gloucestershire Way. It diverts at this point after only 100 yards, keep to the right. Very nice woodland walk, and you come out at the back of Cowley Mill, which has a lot of interesting history that you can read up about. The footpath's been diverted around Cowley Mill, and the obvious route is round to the left, but down through the undergrowth there's a little path that goes back towards Cowley, across a little bridge, alongside the stream for a little while, and then through this gate. And there's a relatively new set of buildings here associated with Cotswold alpacas. And in Cowley village, there's a group of people called the Wild and Woolly Women, I think, who do spinning of alpaca wool. This track was in good condition in summertime, but in winter it does get very muddy. At the end of the short section there, you climb over this stile through a gate and across those fields that you can see up ahead. Just recently, one of the local farmers has been keeping goats in the field there. And the landowners planted some trees, and there are pipes underground to make sure these trees get enough water to get them established. Very nice buildings on the right, and something that from a distance definitely does look like a horse, but it's just the right shape and it kind of enhances the landscape. Over a stile, or better still, open the gate, and a little country lane goes for 100 yards or so into Cowley. This little lane here gets very congested when Cowley Manor is in full swing, and becomes quite a challenge for vehicles to get past. Here's Cowley Rectory, where Margaret and I have been living for the last few years. We decked it out a bit for VE Day. And here we are, back at the famous post box in the centre of Cowley village. So that concludes the walk around Cowley parish and concludes the series of 10 little walks which we've been doing together over the past year. Thank you.